Hi everybody, welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
So today we're introducing our all-English lecture. It's going to be a bit about food. So Erin, let me ask you this. You go into a restaurant, you pick up a menu. How do you choose what to eat?
Well, if there's English, I'll read that. And if there's not, hopefully there are pictures.
Okay, but how would you choose from the menu? You're looking down, do you read the ingredients? Do you just go with, I feel like this? I mean, how do you pick what to order?
Usually I read the ingredients. There might be a couple of ingredients that will make me not want to eat the food, like mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so I'll look at that sort of thing. But generally I look at the ingredients instead of thinking about the name because there are things in there that I might not want to eat.
Every now and again I get attracted by a name and I decide I just have to see what it is and want to try it. Do you try and have new stuff when you can? Like,
nope.
You just prefer to stick with stuff you know you're going to like?
Yeah.
I guess I'm mostly the same. I don't choose options with meat in because I don't eat meat. So I usually have a smaller set to choose from and most of them I'm familiar with. So finding a new vegetarian dish is a big kick for me. I like that.
It's been nice and exciting.
Okay, now what if you don't have a menu though? That's what we're going to look at today in our article, The Art of Japan's Fake Food. Let's read through it.
You're wandering the streets of Tokyo in search of dinner, but you're not quite sure what to eat because you can't read the menus. Then, a brightly illuminated glass case outside a restaurant catches your eye. Inside is an assortment of dishes for you to choose from. Thanks to this ingenious fake food, you simply have to point at what you want. The original fake food was made in the 1920s for Japanese restaurant patrons, not foreign visitors. Menus in restaurants used to be uncommon, so Takizo Iwasaki had the idea of creating realistic fake food people could easily point at to order. As the story goes, Iwasaki was too poor to pay his electricity bills, forcing his family to use candles. One evening, he picked up a piece of melted wax from the tatami floor and saw the ridges of the mat imprinted onto the wax. This gave him the idea of making food replicas with wax. After a series of failures, Iwasaki finally completed a replica of an omelette rice dish that even his wife couldn't tell was fake. Iwasaki's invention became a huge hit. However, wax is fragile and melts easily. Thus, resin was used instead from the late 1970s. To produce artificial food, craftsmen use many of the same preparation techniques they would use to make real food. This means cutting plastic vegetables with kitchen knives, shaping plastic sushi by hand, and more. These intricate details make it easier to mistake these appetizing displays for the real thing. The next time you look through a restaurant window, you might catch your mouth watering at nothing more than a slice of plastic pizza.
Okay, so there we go. So this starts off in a situation that I guess both of us would have experienced, although quite a while ago now, when we first arrived in Taiwan, all those years ago, this idea of walking around the streets in a foreign city where you can't read the menus, okay?
Right.
You're wandering the streets of Tokyo, so you're walking around, you don't really know where you're going to eat, you don't have a plan, you're just looking for something that looks good. But you're not quite sure what to eat because you can't read the menus. You have no idea what these restaurants serve.
Right.
Now, how did you deal with that when you first came to Taiwan?
Well, I guess if I was eating with a Taiwanese friend, it would be easier.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But I guess when I first came to Taiwan, we didn't have smartphones back then where I could look it up. So I would be directed to a restaurant by some friends where I knew there would be English menus and then only eat at those places.
Okay, yeah. I was lucky because there were a couple of vegetarians in my office.
Okay.
And they were able to take me to the places where I could get vegetarian fried rice, dumplings, noodles, and so on. And they very quickly taught me a few phrases that I might, to order the food. And then slowly over the years, I've learned a few extra characters. So I can't read most of a menu, but I can maybe read enough and say enough to figure out how to get something that I would like.
Yeah, I suppose once you're in a restaurant with a Taiwanese friend and they pick something out, or they point something out to you that you might like, you just sort of memorize that one.
Yes, that's right. Okay, the article continues. Then, a brightly illuminated glass case outside a restaurant catches your eye. If something is illuminated, it means there are lights pointing at it or lights around it, kind of lighting it up, making it seem bright and shiny. And of course, it's going to attract your attention or, as we say in the article, catch your eye. Something catches your eye, you notice it very easily, and you kind of can't help but go and look at it a bit more closely to see what it is.
All right, well, then it says inside is an assortment of dishes for you to choose from. Now, assortment is like a variety, so there's different kinds of dishes in there, like you would see on a menu, but just in dishes.
Yes, in these little 3D models, okay, that's full of these things. I often see it with bowls of noodles. That seems to be a common one.
I usually see them in lots of ramen restaurants.
Yes.
Lots of ramen dishes.
I guess that's the Japanese kind of connection, really. The article then says, thanks to this ingenious fake food, you simply have to point at what you want. So you don't need to read a menu. You don't need to ask anybody, what's this? What have we got? What do you have? You just go, that one. Point it. And that's how I ordered food in night markets, really. That worked for me.
This one looks okay.
Yeah, I'll try it. So here we see the adjective ingenious, and ingenious means really clever, really smart, a kind of creative idea that just solves a problem in a very smart, very easy way that you think, wow, that's so clever. That does everything I want.
Then it says, it gives us a bit of history behind this fake food. It says, the original fake food was made in the 1920s for Japanese restaurant patrons, not foreign visitors.
So that's interesting. It wasn't even for foreigners coming to Japan, who I guess maybe there weren't so many of back in the 20s.
Right.
No. But so it was created for Japanese people who should have been able to read the menus.
Okay, well, it has the word original here, which means this was the first of its kind. Okay, so now we're not using the original. It's much later now, but this was the first time this fake food was used. And it was used for patrons, which are the people who eat at a restaurant.
That's right.
Or who shop in a place. Someone who gives their business to the restaurant,
to the company, exactly. So we just said that, well, this is strange because Japanese people going into a Japanese restaurant should have no problem ordering their food, right? I mean, if we went into an English-speaking restaurant and we have an English menu, no problem, no need for fake food.
Right.
Not that it doesn't help. I mean, having some pictures in the menu helps.
It does.
Having some fake food in a display case, in a glass case, you go, that's made up my mind. I definitely want that.
Yeah.
But you don't need it. It's just an extra feature, so why have it? Well, the article explains menus in restaurants used to be uncommon.
Okay.
So there we go. Used to be means in the past, in a situation which is no longer in effect.
Okay.
So they used to be uncommon. They didn't have menus.
All right. So I suppose if you go into a restaurant and there's no menu and no pictures, then you don't really know what that restaurant has to offer. So.
I'm kind of guessing in the old days, restaurants didn't have such a big variety, a big assortment to choose from. They maybe only had a few things.
A few dishes.
So you'd go in and you'd either order what the only thing they have, or you say, what have you got today? And today we're doing like duck soup noodles.
Right.
And that's what you have. However, restaurants did need to have a few more when they started getting more options. There was still no menu. So we've got this guy. He had the idea of creating realistic fake food people could easily point at to order.
Okay.
So we got the adjective realistic there, and it just means that it looks real. It looks like it's real life, or it has other qualities that make you think it's real, not fake.
Right.
Okay? You could talk about looking at a photo and saying, well, that looks realistic. Special effects in movies, if they're really good, they look realistic. They don't look, that's obviously a computer-generated thing. That looks quite realistic, something like that.
Okay, so let's find out a little bit more about Iwasaki and how he's come across this idea to start creating this realistic fake food. The article says, as the story goes, Iwasaki was too poor to pay his electricity bills, forcing his family to use candles. So we know that he wasn't a very rich man, but he must have had some good ideas in his head there because he's come up with this one. But he was too poor to pay his electricity bills. Now, the noun electricity is a form of energy that we use to give power to the machines or the lights in our homes or buildings.
That's right. It's energy from electricity is charged particles. They have a positive and a negative charge, and they either move or they gather in a single place, and that generates energy or power. So by saying he couldn't pay his electricity bills, we mean he couldn't pay for a supply of electricity to come to his house for light and for cooking and for heat.
Right. Well, back then, I think it might have been a little bit easier to deal with than maybe it is now.
That's true, yes.
Right now. But, I mean, by the 1920s, electricity is getting to be fairly normal.
Yeah, it first started appearing around sort of 1880s kind of time. So there's been 40 years or so for it to spread.
Right.
Now, we also use the phrase, as the story goes, at the start of this sentence. And what we mean is there are actually quite a few different stories about who created the first fake food, why they created it, where it was first used. As is the case with a lot of things like this, no one is quite sure. Some guy has one story, a few other people have another story. So we're kind of concentrating on this particular story, one of the main ones. Okay, so we go on and we see that one evening he picked up a piece of melted wax from the tatami floor and saw the ridges of the mat imprinted onto the wax. Okay, so the tatami is this traditional Japanese straw mat. Okay, it's kind of this covered with dead or picked up plant material. And some wax from his candle has melted. It's got so hot, it's kind of become liquid. And it's dropped down onto the floor.
Okay. So gone down onto this mat, the wax has gone onto the mat. And when wax melts or gets kind of into its liquid form, it picks up sort of the impressions or what's imprinted, the impressions of what it falls onto.
Yeah, so it kind of shapes itself around whatever it's touching.
Yeah, and so the tatami mat has these ridges or these
raised
lines.
Areas.
Yeah. And the wax sort of imprinted onto those ridges and made the shape of the tatami mat in the wax.
Yeah, so when you lift up the wax, you look at it and you go, wow, that's exactly the same shape. Yeah. All the details are the same as the top of my wax mat. That's really interesting. Imagine like making, you can make things out of wax, or you can use other materials to make an imprint of your teeth. Like if you're getting a brace, a metal brace in your mouth. You bite down, you get this thing imprinted into this material for your teeth. Okay, we'll talk about it how we use this idea in a few moments. Right now, we're going to take a short break.
Okay, welcome back. So we're talking about Iwasaki and his idea for making fake food replicas or realistic fake food that people could use to choose in restaurants. And we're talking about how he came up with the idea. And so we learned that he doesn't have a lot of money. He can't pay for his electricity, so he's using candles in a house. One night, he picks up a piece of melted wax that's fallen onto the tatami mat, and he's seen that the wax has the exact form of the tatami mat printed into it.
Yeah.
So this is going to give him an idea, and the article says this gave him the idea of making food replicas with wax. So we see this word replica here, which is basically like
a copy.
Yes, a copy of the thing that he wants to make. So
yeah, and a copy of what the original thing is. You go, here's the original, here's a replica, and it should look exactly the same.
Exactly the same. To the point where you're not able to tell which one is fake and real.
Exactly, yeah. If you didn't know, then you'd think there's two of them exactly the same. So after a series of failures, Iwasaki finally completed a replica of an omelette rice dish that even his wife couldn't tell was fake. So here we see the phrase, a series of. That means it happened again and again. There were a number of things, one after the other. And here we're talking about failures. So he had a series of failures.
Okay.
He tried it and it didn't work. Then he tried it again and it didn't work, maybe in a different way. So every time there's something else that goes wrong, you know, or it doesn't look quite right. So he just goes, okay, melt the wax and start again.
Now, that's quite a common thing when you're coming up with an invention or you're thinking of new ideas. It's common to come across this series of failures until you get it right.
Yeah, you kind of improve stage by stage. Okay, we could also say, you know, somebody had a series of unfortunate experiences. That means bad things happened again and again.
Right.
But finally, he's got this replica, this copy of an omelette rice dish. So that's a rice, and I think in Japan the omelette rice is like a big mound of rice covered with egg. On top. Okay, so and his wife looks at it and she's like, that's a real rice omelette.
I'm hungry.
How did you do that? You know, I don't know, it's fake. It looks so realistic.
Okay, well, not only his wife thought that it was a great invention here, it says Iwasaki's invention became a huge hit. So where you see the noun invention here comes off the word invent, which is a verb to think of a new idea, to create a new product that's never been created before. It's also related to inventor, which is the person who creates this new idea. So his invention, these fake food replicas, became a huge hit. Now, hit here is not to strike someone or to beat someone. It means it became very, very popular. Sort of like we would say how things go viral today.
Exactly. Well, we still use hit, you know, movies, music can be big hits. Okay, the article then says, however, wax is fragile and melts easily.
Okay.
Thus, resin was used instead from the late 1970s. So if something is fragile, it breaks easily, it's easily damaged, it doesn't hold its form for under pressure from, could be heat or could be contact or anything else. So wax is fragile. You can try this if you have some candle wax. They're fairly easy to break, and they also melt easily once it gets a little bit hot.
And we know that if they're in illuminated glass cases,
they're hot, definitely
they've got hot lights shining on them, so they're definitely going to melt.
Yeah, so he thinks, okay, or somebody in the 70s starts to think, we can't keep using wax. It melts, it doesn't look good, it breaks too easily, so we're going to use something else, which is resin. Now, resin is a natural substance. It doesn't melt in water, so that's one thing that makes it good. It's kind of harder and more solid, and it's made by trees or plants. That's natural resin. Artificial resin, so that's man-made resin, is this kind of plastic that you use. It's the base of pretty much all the plastics or other things we have. So if you've got a plastic pen or a plastic stuff on your desk, the base of that will be some kind of resin. So we could have said plastic here in the article. It's a kind of plastic. Also going to point out, notice we've used a couple of conjunctions here in the article. However, which means kind of like disagreeing with what's happened before, showing a contrast, and thus, which means therefore or so.
So this is going to happen.
Yes, so we use these conjunctions just to explain what's going on. However, unfortunately, this was bad. Wax didn't work because it's too fragile. So, therefore, for this reason, resin was used instead.
Okay, well, let's continue on. It says, to produce artificial food, craftsmen use many of the same preparation techniques they would use to make real food. Okay, now this is interesting. This is something that I actually was quite surprised by. So it says to produce artificial food. Artificial is another word for fake. So this is another way of saying the fake replicas here. Craftsmen, or the people who are making this, the people who are making the crafts, I guess, so the crafts are the food, use many of the same preparation techniques that they would use to make real food. So if they're making something to do with vegetables, like they actually have to cut the vegetables.
As if you were really cooking. Like things like, I'm going to cut it slightly this way, or I'm going to julienne it and cut it into long strips and so on.
It's done the exact same way as if it was real.
Okay, I should also mention artificial can also be used to mean man-made.
Yes.
So something that isn't formed by nature, something that's formed by the action of people or machines.
Right.
Now, the article gives examples. As Erin just mentioned, this means cutting plastic vegetables with kitchen knives. So just like you'd cut up a carrot or, a bell pepper or an onion to put it in your soup.
In your real food.
So they have to get the plastic vegetables, cut them up with sharp knives so they look just like the real food would if you were putting it in this, bowl of noodle soup or something like that.
And that's the point. I mean, you want it to look realistic, and so you have to go about it and do it in the real way.
Yeah. Another example they give is shaping plastic sushi by hand. If you go to a sushi restaurant, you can see the guys at work. They get the ball of rice and they kind of just sort of push it into a shape, and then they will take out, whatever piece of fish or seafood, and they will put it on the top. They will wrap the seafood around it, maybe put on a bit of sauce, something like that, and they will create all of these things, then put them out on the dishes.
Yes.
So if they're doing this for fake food, they have to do it in the same way.
Okay.
A little fake ball of plastic rice. We'll wrap it around with a fake seaweed wrapper. We'll put the fake, salmon on top with a little fake piece of plastic, wasabi mayonnaise or something.
It sounds like actually it could be quite a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, this is really artistic. They're not just kind of printing these out machine-wise. They're not making these fake food things in a factory. And that's kind of why we use craftsmen in the last sentence. They're not just factory workers going, okay, print, machine create. They're going, each individual piece, I'm going to spend time getting this one piece right, and then I'm going to move on to the next piece.
Right. So craftsman, a similar word kind of to artist.
Yeah.
And so like with arts and crafts, we have artists and we have craftsmen.
Yeah, craftsmen make things. So a craftsman making a chair would be carving each piece of wood and polishing it and making sure it fits together. So these people are doing the same with this fake food. They're creating the bowls, each separate ingredient one by one, cutting them up, adding in a layer so it looks like there's soup, and it's really clever.
Okay, well, it goes on to say, these intricate details make it easier to mistake these appetizing displays for the real thing. So, like we just talked about, the craftsmen use these intricate details, these small little things that you can't get with machines. These small little, each little individual piece of rice is shaped in a certain way.
Or the fold in the way the broccoli grows out in a tree.
Right. So it's these small, tiny little details that make it look more like the real food. And it says here it makes these appetizing displays. Now, appetizing is an adjective to describe something that makes you really want to eat it. It's making you hungry. It's giving you an appetite.
Yeah, you see it and you go, oh, that looks good. I'm going to eat meat. I'm going to have that. Exactly. So we finish off the article by saying the next time you look through a restaurant window, you might catch your mouth watering at nothing more than a slice of plastic pizza. Now, we say your mouth watering, and that really does happen. It's a popular phrase to say, something makes your mouth water, but it actually does happen.
It's a real thing.
It's an effect of something that is appetizing. Yeah, it'll cause you to react, and smells do it, and looking at stuff can do it. It'll make you go, I want to eat.
Even if you're just really hungry and you get an idea of what you want to eat in your head, maybe you're just thinking about it. You haven't seen any pictures and you say, I would really love to eat that.
I have to say, that doesn't often happen to me, but it does with my wife.
Okay.
Yeah, I could be talking to her about eating a particular thing. Let's go to this place. And she will suddenly get very excited and very hungry. And I can tell
her mouth is watering.
Mouth is watering just a little bit. Now, does this work for you? Do you see the plastic food and think, I really want to eat this now?
Not particularly, no. I mean, maybe if it was something that happened to me more commonly, but when I'm sort of passing by a place, I might stop and look at it, sort of thing. But I might not particularly be hungry at the time, or maybe it's just not something I'm interested in eating. There is a pizza place down the road from where I work, and it has some of these plastic pizzas in there. And
okay, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really get an appetizing feel off of those, but maybe that's because I'm picky with pizza.
Okay.
But I do like to look at them, though, because I am actually really interested in the artistry of them and sort of what goes into making them. I think it's actually really interesting.
Yeah, how do you make... I mean, obviously, I don't know if these things are painted as well as made up. I imagine they probably are, some of them, to get the details of, maybe some of the herbs or spices or extra small ingredients to get them looking really like the real thing. I'm sure the first time I saw one of these, I was like, that's odd.
Strange.
Yeah. Why would they put a whole bowl of noodles in there? Isn't that a bit of won't it go bad?
Yeah.
And then, it's fake. I see. Okay, which brings us to the end of today's article. And we hope all this talk about food has made your mouth water. Hopefully it sounded appetizing to you. It's a really interesting invention. I haven't seen it. I don't remember seeing it in the UK.
No.
Except maybe in a Japanese or other Asian restaurant. But I'll take another look the next time I'm back to see if I can find any. But that's all we've got time for. Thanks for listening, everyone. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.